Artificial intelligence. What comes to mind when you think of that? We're here to talk about that and the impact in healthcare. This is Simon and Maren with SMM Coaching and Consulting.
So when you think about AI, right, it's a hot topic. Everybody's talking about it. There are lots of pieces to it, right? From what's useful, what's not useful. But realistically, we want to ask ourselves, how does this impact the healthcare system? How does it help impact the healthcare workers? And ultimately, how does it impact our patients?
So when you think about system impact, what comes to mind first?
Well, when you think about what are systems struggling with, right? They struggle with, keeping people, right? Turnover is an issue. Staffing is an issue. Burnout, stress, those are big issues that most systems are facing. And so we're always trying to figure out how can we be more efficient, but also how do we do more, sometimes with less. And now do we have an opportunity to use technology to actually get us to a place where we can do more with better tools.
And when you think of an individual provider or someone working in the healthcare field, what AI components come to mind for you then?
Sure. And I think part of what we think about is when we think about AI, it's always about how is this going to be helpful? What's my learning curve, right? If I have a steep learning curve, I don't know how much I want to do that.
Yeah.
Second of all, what am I going to gain by implementing it? And then third of all, is it going to actually improve quality of care?
That's a good one.
So those are the things that I think whenever we look at any kind of AI technology, those are the questions that we should be asking. And those are the components that we should be considering when we're thinking about implementation. If you're a provider and if you're a leader and you still see patients, right? The hard part is what's your biggest concern? It's how do I get things documented? How do I have enough time? How do I have a good work-life balance? So I'm not taking 2 hours of work home at night, right? Those are the things that we start thinking about. And so do we now have some particular tools that potentially can be helpful?
And how would you say that you've personally started to integrate AI into your healthcare profession?
Yeah, I think there are a couple of different things. Many of you know ChatGPT, and again, I will say this up front. ChatGPT is not HIPAA compliant. Do not use that for specific patient information. But there are similar tools out there that are like ChatGPT that are HIPAA compliant and are specifically for medical personnel. So it can really help you in some of that clinical decision support. So I think there's sort of an entry point, and I do use some of those tools to really help me kind of guide what are the decisions that we need to be made, because we know that medical literature is moving very fast. And so how do we keep up with what's sort of the best thing? I think the other thing that really is probably the best use of AI currently is really in automating those things that are more administrative, right? So think about the letters you generate, or think about, scheduling issues, or think about how you respond even to patient questions. A lot of that can actually be built in. And many of the EMRs are now building those kind of skills and tools into what's happening. Even if you think about the calls that you get into the office or the messages that you have to respond to, how many of those are actually pretty standard type of questions that could actually be answered, not necessarily by an AI computer, but by a virtual health assistant that can actually now really mimic what we as professionals can do. They're not replacing us. And I want to be really clear, one of the things that for me is really critical is we cannot lose sight of the human need, the human connection need in healthcare. It's incredibly important. And the question is, can we actually improve that interaction by using artificial intelligence?
I really, really love that question. So as you're talking about, what might work, what we're not taking away, are there any other kind of concerns that are popping up at this stage in AI and healthcare that you'd want to address?
Yeah, I think there's a lot. I mean, we still know that there are remember AI, the way AI works is it gathers information and then it compiles that information. And so, bad information in, guess what? Bad information out, just like a computer, right? So there may be some biases around the data that we're actually exploring. And this goes to sort of a broader question of how often are we actually doing studies in minority populations, or in populations that are traditionally not in major studies. And so can we now apply what we know about general populations to subgroups? And so we want to be really careful about how we use that kind of information. I think the privacy security issue is an ongoing issue. And then the question that really comes out is, what are the legal and ethical implications? Because we really don't have any case study that says, is this good? Is this not good? And ethically, I think we need to ask ourselves as healthcare workers, am I actually letting go of my ability to think or to learn because now I have this AI technology that can, in a sense, substitute some of my thinking? I think we need to be very, very cautious, because I think what we're not saying is that somehow this replaces our need as individuals to grow, to learn, to become more sophisticated in how we approach healthcare. And then I think that the other thing is that, change is difficult, right? And we have talked about how important change management is and what's needed to be successful with change. So I think we need to think about those pieces as the challenges, but also recognize that it can really help. And the question is, how does it help in a way that's actually thoughtful and functional?
So, I'm going to ask you to predict, but maybe more just get your opinion. What would you say you're most excited about for the future of integrating AI into healthcare? Like, what's your biggest hope for that?
Sure. I think there's so many pieces to that, right? I think there's sort of an immediate, mid, and long-term kind of goal. And I think when we look at the immediate kind of applications within AI, it really is about how can I, as a healthcare worker, whether I'm a provider, whether I'm a nurse, can I somehow use this technology to alleviate some of the stress and burnout that we're feeling?
Yeah.
Because that's what's happening right now. Can I improve my work-life balance by having tools that mean I don't have to take as much work home? Maybe I still have some, but it's not 2 hours worth. Or maybe at the end of the shift, I've had enough of the time with patients directly that it's not about now I've got to get all the administrative stuff done. And so we can use it in the immediate term using those kinds of things. I think it's very helpful in terms of scheduling, especially as it comes to workforce management and how do we manage all the ins and outs. I know a lot of CNAs, for example, certified nursing assistants, they have 2 or even more jobs, and how do they manage that? And sometimes AI can be helpful in that. So I think that's what we've got in the immediate timeframe. I think what's coming in the intermediate timeframe is really around what we call clinical decision support. So again, recognizing that not any one of us as a medical personnel is going to know all of what's in medicine, right? So how do I now access that in a way that's really timely, gives me good information, and then allows me to make good decisions that are really personalized? And we're doing this to some degree already in oncology, and even in some of the pharmacogenomics that's happening. We're really using some of that technology to really personalize healthcare, right? To really meet the need. So I think that's what I see in the intermediate. I think the long term is really wide open. I think it's really wide open. I think when we think about virtual healthcare, for example, I think that's going to be changed by what AI is able to do, especially for sort of more of those simple problems. If you think about minute clinics, or you think about those urgent care type situations, I've got a cold, what can I do? I think those kinds of things can be really done well through an artificial intelligence platform. It also means, though, that for each of us in our healthcare fields, whatever field you're in, even if as a leader or as a frontline worker, it doesn't matter. It means that we have to be willing to really work to the top of our ability. So, I've been in primary care a lot of my life. And in primary care, sometimes you get kind of stuck in seeing somewhat mundane things from time to time, the colds, the flus, the scrapes and bumps and those kinds of things. When you really think about your education, you have a lot more knowledge than that. And so how can I maybe take those pieces out, have maybe more of the complexity in, hopefully have a better volume management, task management part of that, and allow me to actually have more satisfaction by having the kind of care that I actually trained for.
It sounds like what you're talking about kind of underneath all of this is process and having your policies, your procedures, protocols all in place. And that a lot of that can be automated and maybe should be automated.
Right. Well, and I think once we do automate it, the chance of error goes down, right? The chance of missing documents, right? We know that happens. The chance for us to reduce redundancy, right? I know I've been a patient. I'm sure some of you have. You go to one doc, they ask you questions. You go to the next doc, they ask you the same questions, right? They get the same intake form. And you're asking yourself, so why am I doing this multiple times? And hopefully that can be reduced in terms of process as well. So I think there's a lot of opportunity. So the question that I think about a lot is, how does an organization get ready for this technology?
It's a great question.
Revolution, right? And you and I have done some work in change management. And what are some of the things that you think about in terms of change and sort of preparing? Because I think it's the same whether it's a technology or whether it's even a culture change. What are some of the thoughts that come to mind for you?
Yeah, when I think of change management, I think of readiness. And, we've heard like 70% of your organization needs to be ready for change for it actually to stick and to take place. So bringing that certainty, bringing clarification in, showing people how it aligns to the values and the culture of your organization, and really answering the question for your coworkers, yourself, your team, where are we going? Why are we doing this, and how are we going to get there the best that we can as it unfolds?
Yeah, I think part of the change management piece of it is always around how do you bring people along on the journey? Some of us can lead far ahead and we leave a lot of people behind. And so we have to really be thoughtful about how do we actually incorporate technologies? How do we incorporate process change? And it really is around that clarity. I mean, we talk about SMART goals, and I think those are important as well to measure our change. But I think we have to also think about how do I bring people along? How do I help them be part of that solution, not necessarily imposing solutions? And so one of the things that we think a lot about is how does that culture work? You know, are your values actually aligned with those strategies, with those tactics, with your policy process, all the way down into your frontline staff? Because I think that's going to be critically important, regardless of the change you're making, and especially in technology. You know, I remember when, you know, we started using more MRIs, and, you know, for a long time, there was this thought of, well, why are we using more MRIs? It's more expensive. It maybe gives us a little bit more information. But as that technology has kind of evolved, there's been a really significant place for it. And so I think those are the kinds of things we need to ask ourselves. We as professionals and as leaders need to challenge ourselves about the status quo. Right. And I think, you know, we've seen that, we've talked about that. So I think if you're in a position right now where you're considering whether it's the AI technology or other kinds of changes that you're thinking about, we're here to help you with that. We recognize that culture change is not always easy, but there are strategies that can really be implemented to help you through that, not only from a culture change, but a process change, technology changes. So we're here. If you're interested in learning more, please reach out.